Welcome to Partly Whimsical. So thank you for joining me today. I have a special guest here today, and he's going to speak about himself. And our topic today will be called, How Can the Right Environment Boost Your Child's ABA Therapy? So thank you for tuning in, and hopefully you will enjoy this video. So we're going to jump right into it, and I'm going to introduce Tony, and Tony's going to tell you a little bit about himself and what he does. So Tony, take it away. Good to have you here today.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much. Okay, so my name's Tony Alberding. I'm the owner and executive director of BetterTogether. We are an ABA provider that has been serving the Bay Area of California for about the last 10 years. And more recently this year, I moved back to be closer to my family. I'm originally from Adams County, actually. Grew up in Decatur. And decided to move back here, be close to family, and expand the practice. So we're in the process of opening our doors and getting ready. And actually, at this point, we're able to start accepting clients here in the Allen County, Adams County, surrounding areas for in-home ABA therapy.
You guys hear that? He's ready to accept clients. So this should be good for you guys. Yeah. So we're going to delve right into this. The first thing we're going to be talking about is the controversy around ABA therapy. What's the right approach? That's a hot topic, right? We both
jumping right in.
We both know that's a hot topic. Both of us know there's some controversy surrounding ABA therapy. Many families are unsure if it's the right approach for their child. I think it's important to clarify how ABA therapy can be used in a respectful, child-centered way. Tony, can you share what makes ABA therapy ethical and how you ensure that the therapy is aligned with the child's best interests rather than focus on compliances or trying to erase behaviors? You know what they say, erase behaviors.
Right, yeah, for sure. I guess I should start by acknowledging that our field hasn't always gotten it right, especially in the early days. Mm-hmm. In the probably certainly the mid 20th century, behavioral intervention was pretty much a blunt instrument. It was kind of reinforce the good and punish the bad. And a lot of times that the punishment, punishment procedures were used heavily. Sometimes, most of the time, not all that effective in the long run. But even more damaging is, they would often be dehumanizing. Mm-hmm. Back in those days, there was a lot of institutionalization going on. And it wasn't good. So in more recent times, and certainly with the rise of ABA as a therapy for kids specifically with autism, even those early days had a lot of problems with them. But like any field, you grow and you learn, you refine your craft and develop better and better practices. I would say, when I, these days there's a very strong movement towards, positive practices only, mm-hmm. avoiding those punishment procedures and that sort of thing, all of which is great. There are times though where I'm a little I have to smile a little bit though, because from my perspective I'm kind of like, well welcome to the party. It's pretty fun over here because very early in my own career, like these kind of positive practices aren't things that are new from the standpoint of our science itself. One of my very first jobs when I very first moved out to LA, had a job at a place called the Institute of Applied Behavior Analysis. Mm-hmm. One of the guys that ran that was a guy named Gary Lavinia, and he was one of the authors of a book that was published clear back, I think, in 1989 called Progress Without Punishment. Mm-hmm. I actually looked up before I came here. I wanted to have the right information. It's actually still available on Amazon right now. This is why, and I think maybe we'll talk a little bit more about this, but the need for competent, compassionate practitioners to do ABA, who actually know what the heck they're doing, and know how to avoid those less savory practices and focus on positive interventions. That's a key component to ensure that you have the right kind of practitioner and to be an informed consumer of the services you're getting.
Good, thank you so much for that. Because we know that ABA, I was a registered behavior technician, and I used to hear a lot of things about, parents would say a lot of things about ABA and how, they make you do things or try to change the child. So I thank you so much for sharing that, because I saw the results of what happened when you use ABA the right way.
Right.
My clients, they was able to make some remarkable goals.
Yep.
They was able to do that because he was the one, or not just him, but BCBAs are the ones who implement, start the goals or create the goals, and RBTs are the ones who's supposed to implement it. And,
That's right.
and it all depends on how you do it. So thank you for sharing that. One of the other things that I did want to talk to you about was, what does a good ABA therapy session look like? Because I know, being firsthand, how it looks, being in that field, I can tell, what that looks like. And even though I may have had success, but I also saw some bad ABA therapy going on. I saw it. So I'm not going to speak about that. I'm going to let the professional talk about that. So from your experience, what would be a good ABA, and what are some of the key elements that make a ABA session really good?
Well, the core of the behavioral approach starts with the idea of reinforcement, right? How does the things that I do make my life better? Or do they, right? So it all starts by having the therapy time be reinforcing, right? Where it's, when the behavior technician shows up, the child should be absolutely thrilled that they're there, because they know it is party time, and it's just going to be a blast. As part of the programming, though, right? When you're running the programs, doing the actual intervention, what I see a lot of times is in the midst of that of the therapy session, they start conflating the skills that they're trying to work on, the programs that they're trying to run, and trying to almost kind of shoehorn in like behavior management programs. Right, so for example, if you're trying to increase functional communication skills and you're working on object labels, that is not also the time to try to be working on getting them to pay attention longer to non-preferred tasks, right? Like if needing to work independently or staying on task for longer periods of time for structured activities and things they might not necessarily want to do in the moment, there needs to be a program that you're setting up and designing that meets the child where they are now, and target that gradually, systematically, and with reinforcement in mind. The time to work on that is not when you're trying to teach them the difference between a ball and a cheeseburger, right? And so that you see that play out, and certainly at the behavior technician level, that's an entry level position, right? So they shouldn't be expected to kind of have that nuance and arrive there on their own. That's what good supervision looks like, right? So it's important that that they're getting that oversight, and that the programs themselves are set up, the instructions of how to run the programs themselves keep these things in mind. and they're not, so it's not like, oh, he's, they're starting to vocally protest doing something. Let's do this full bore, reactive strategy, put it on extinction, do the follow through, right? I tell my staff all the time, you should not, there's that prompting, which you're aware of, that the hand over hand prompt, that should never, ever, ever be done as a way to like compel a response for someone who's not a willing learner at the time. If you're doing that as a way to gain compliance or whatever, or follow through with a task, that's some outdated thinking. You should have that willing learner that's present, ready. They know what they're working for. They want it. They're motivated by it, and they've got you like, what do I need to do because I'm here for it, right? You need to see that in their body language, right? And if you don't, then you shouldn't be trying to power through and get through the program. You should take a step back. Get their engagement back, get them back to a place where they are a willing participant, and then start again. The best way to do that is to have an enriching, reinforcing environment and not withholding that. Be generous in how you're reinforcing.
So what would you say to like an ABA who's coming in, right? Like what are some of the key elements or something that you can suggest for that person who wants to be an ABA therapist? Because I know a lot of people who came in, they had other backgrounds. So a lot of them didn't even work with children. They had other backgrounds, whereas I may have had work with children for many years. Some of them didn't. They may work with their cousins or nieces or something like that. So what is something that they should think about? And it's not on here, I kind of just threw that in there, but what are some of the things that you would suggest? One thing that you would suggest with someone coming in to this field, so it wouldn't be such a high turnover, right?
Honestly, that's a tough nut to crack in some ways. I think I mentioned this when you and I spoke before. I often call that turning baristas into BTs, right? Baristas to behavior technicians, and it's there can be a lot of challenges with that because we are in large part we are a healthcare provider, right? And we seem to have this. There's this unique thing about the way our model works, where I can't really think of another profession in the healthcare sector where the provider themselves is responsible for training up the frontline person to competency starting from scratch, right? There is no x-ray technician that was hired by a hospital and then learned how to be an x-ray technician, right? They're coming in with those, certainly the educational experiences, maybe some internships, same with nurses, you name it. In the ABA field, a good provider will be one where they take that responsibility seriously and put in the resources and the investments that are needed to create a competent behavior technician, and so that when they get out in the field, they're able to not only be effective in their therapy, but even more basically, these folks are in charge of the safety and well-being of neurodivergent little kids, and that can be a tall order. My starting point when I'm hiring, kind of my first question is, would I entrust this person with the care and safety of one of my little people loved ones, right? And the answer is not always yes to everyone that comes through the door. In fact, sometimes it's about 1 in 20. So you have to be careful. Again, I go back to this idea of parents being an informed consumer of the services they're receiving, right? Asking a prospective provider, what's your training look like? You're not always going to be able to like meet and interrogate your child's therapist before they come in. That there's don't necessarily expect that. That's a that indicates that there's not a baseline level of trust in your provider to begin with, which itself should be something to think about, right? You should have that trust in your provider. We'll talk a little bit more, I think, later on some of the ways that you can be an informed consumer.
Yeah.
But that's a big part of it. So when it comes to someone who might be interested in joining this field, as a behavior technician, number one, be in it for the right reasons. It's an amazing science, right? The methods, the concepts, the principles that we apply are really cool, and they're really they're ubiquitous. They're out there in the world. You see it everywhere all the time. So the more that you know about that, you'll find it fascinating. And then what's really cool is when you learn more about that and then learn how you can kind of systematically be applying these things, and you see the results for yourself every day that you're out there with the child. It's great.
Thank you for sharing that. And that leads me into the practical tips for families, right? So for families who might be concerned about the effectiveness or other ethical aspects of ABA therapy, what advice would you give them when looking for a therapist or program that's a good fit for their child?
That is a great question. For every family that I talk to, every parent that calls looking for services or interested in knowing more, the first thing I point them to is a very specific document. It's called the CASP, C-A-S-P, stands for Council of Autism Service Providers, CASP ASD Treatment Guidelines. Google that. Version 3 just came out. It is a wonderful document. What we talked before about being an informed consumer, that is the single best resource I think that's out there to understand what best practices are supposed to look like. What is a good ABA program supposed to be? Everything from the training of behavior technicians and their ongoing support and supervision to caseload sizes from the BCBA. It's a very parent friendly document. It's the intended audience is folks that aren't ABA professionals.
Okay.
It's very accessible, and every single time, whether they come with us or anyone else, I encourage them to become familiar with the contents of that document, and then any provider that you're interested in, hit them with some of the questions that come from that. How often will the supervising BCBA be out to see my kids program in action? What does the training look like? What does the oversight look like? What is the caseload size of your BCBA? That's what I mean by being an informed consumer, and it will. This is unfortunately still a young field, and therefore still a pretty fairly unregulated field, and there's some junk out there, right? Not all providers are created equally,
right?
And so you have to know what it's supposed to look like, and then make sure that the folks providing those services are doing so.
And I think that's a good point, because especially if you're talking about giving somebody trust over your child, right? So if they are that good consumer and they know what to look for, so it won't be something that they would just hear, but something they were able to know, because they know that this is what's supposed to happen, and then you will get those outcomes, right? It won't be something where you may have a child and you'll have a therapist coming in, or BCBA, or whoever the case may be, and then you get like frustrated. But if you know ahead of time, and you prepare yourself like anything else, right? When you're buying something, you're going to look on Google, you're going to search it out, right? Before you even get it. So we are more of a knowledgeable people because we are able to do some research. So basically, that's what you're saying. Do the research before. So that is a good tip, practical tip for families. So do your research.
CASP.
Yes.
CASP. CASP ASD treatment guidelines.
Yes, you'll have a better outcome. So as we both are specialists in this field, I know that we see therapy and environment working hand in hand, right? How do you think a supportive autism-friendly space enhances an ABA therapy? Do you feel like that can enhance the ABA therapy?
Oh, certainly. Let's start with something everyone can relate to, right? Like everybody wants to spend their time in a comfortable place. Thing is, with a lot of times with neurodiverse populations, what that environment needs to look like might look pretty different than what most folks would feel like they want to have. So anything that you can do that I'm gonna throw out I'm gonna sound a little nerdy here for a second, but anything that you can do to make it more conducive to be able to attend to relevant stimuli is kind of like the formal way I would say that. But more basically, it's like make it easy to pay attention to the stuff you're supposed to be learning. Right. And I think most people can also relate to the fact, like, if they're in an abrasive environment, somewhere that's not comfortable, somewhere that's grating. If you're in a room and all you're hearing is nails on a chalkboard, if that's all you're hearing, like you're gonna be primed to be set off. And there are a lot of things in the environment that to you or I might be pretty benign. But to them it's the equivalent of those nails on a chalkboard. And not just what you're hearing, but any of the senses. If those are abrasive or aversive to the child, you're not setting them up for success because the starting place is this is not a place I want to be. Get me out of here, right? Like hard to learn new stuff and keep it together if you're in a crummy environment.
And I want to say something about that as well, because I remember I was actually at an event, and I had talked to you about this. I was at an event, and as one of the vendors there was an individual who was coming by with the parent, and the parent was trying to show this individual all of the stuff that was going on. Now, mind you, this was like during Halloween and trick-or-treat, so it was tons of people. The place was nice, but it was overstimulated. And I remember the mom was trying to show the child, and all the child was doing, like putting their hands to putting her hands to her head, and was like, "Mom, just go, just go, just go." And that's what it is. She was trying to show them, and I think that's the thing. I think knowledge is power. And if you see those signs where that environment is not working, then you have to either get the child out or create a space where they can thrive in, right? A space where they can be able to learn. Because if you're trying to show them something like you just said, they're not, you placing that demand on them, but they're not going to listen because they're trying to escape from whatever it is that's causing them to kind of like lose focus. And sometimes I know with teachers or parents, and we overstimulate the atmosphere, we create all this stuff on the board and on the wall, and sometimes it's hard for individuals to really concentrate and think, and we're always placing these demands like, do this and do that, and no, they can't, it's too much. It's overstimulating. I know myself as someone who works closely with families to design sensory-friendly spaces. So I know that those spaces are important. And the reason why I know that is because of going to school for interior design and then also being a registered behavior technician, right? And so I saw firsthand how the effects can have on the individual. But I want to ask you, how do you see sensory-friendly spaces influencing a child's ability to self-regulate or engage with therapy at home?
As I said before, right, it does kind of start with being an environment that's conducive to learning. We deal with in-home ABA programs, right? Like, so we don't, I've worked in centers and classrooms and whatnot at various points in my career, but we're an in-home, we serve our clients, we go to our clients, they don't come to us, primarily in the home, right? So there is, we try to make sure that there is a dedicated space to be able to do at least some of our work. Right, and you know, but we also want to kind of take advantage of the fact that we are working with this child in their natural environment, right? So if there's behavior challenges that are happening, you know, in the natural environment, great. We're in the space to be able to work on that as it's happening. We're talking about challenging behaviors. We have, you know, to address that, we put together a comprehensive behavior support plan. One of the main 4 categories of strategies is all about environmental controls or ecological controls, right? And so those are strategies that they're typically seen as a proactive strategy, right? Meaning what can you do before a challenging behavior ever happens to reduce the child's need, quote unquote, to engage in that behavior in the first place, to reduce the likelihood that it ever takes place. So, you know, having dedicated space where they can go and decompress and you know, not just feel like you have to be on. I think most folks can identify with how important those spaces are to have. And the same is true for anyone in the neurodiverse community. Again, I go back to the fact that sometimes it might look a little different. It might need to be, it may have to be more individualized. You know, but that's where someone like yourself comes in, who can do that type of assessment, identify what is needed, what's missing, and then fill in those gaps. That's I mean, it's environment is so key. We, you know, at ABT we really try to emphasize the role of what we call ecological strategies as the frontline defense, even against things like more severe behaviors like aggression. I mean, in my eyes, if the behavior plan, if the first reactive strategy is response blocking, you know, and you've got to you know, block to keep from getting your eyes gouged out. That shouldn't be the first go-to, right? There are a lot of things that you can do environmentally or ecologically, and that includes, like, you know, some issue, you know, where you might where you might position yourself relative to the child, and getting to that position, not waiting for the big blowout to happen, but doing those proximity changes as soon as you see a precursor behavior to something more severe. Right. You know, the other big one. This is something that I don't know if I don't want to get too much into the weeds and get too far off track, but especially in home environments, there can be a big problem with this thing called bootleg reinforcement. So this is, you know, everything that we do, everything that you do from the behavioral approach is about reinforcement contingencies. Right. What do you need to do? What do you need to refrain from doing in order to get the good stuff that you really, really want? Right. And you know, that's so you arrange these reinforcement contingencies. So what bootleg reinforcement is when, you know, either unplanned or unwanted access to those reinforcers happen, right? So, like an example, if you tell a child no screen time until after dinner, And yeah, you put up the iPad so they can't get to that. But while you're cooking dinner, they can go into the other room, turn on the TV, or go or grab your phone and know the passcode and grab that when you're not looking. That's bootleg reinforcement, right? So the contingency was set right after dinner, and then they found a way around it. So focusing on like environmental strategies to where the environment does some more of the work for you to be able to allow you to more easily follow through with the rules and the limits that you're setting on the child. That can be just as important as having comfortable sensory spaces. Both are really important, but that one especially can really help give the parents a break and make their lives easier.
I like that you said that because is in a sense is staging, right?
Yes.
It's staging
exactly.
that environment to get a greater outcome.
Exactly.
And so if you stage it, then it can help you even with that, and you won't have to do all of the work.
I like that phrase. I like that. I like staging. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
So you won't have to do all of the work. So let the environment work for you.
Exactly.
If you set it up and you stage it right. And so.
By the way, the time to do that is not in the middle of a blowout, right? Like you need to assume that this is going to be the case at some point. So. Establishing that environment and doing it in such a way that you can that it's easy to maintain, so that it's already ready when you need it. Not oh no, now if you wait till you're in the middle of behavior, now you're having to deal with that. You can't necessarily go around and arrange things if you're already in the middle of it. It's too late by then.
That's good. That's a good point. It's like prepping your food. You got to eat, right?
Right.
So you prep it before you eat. So it's the same thing, prepping your environment before that happens.
Yep.
And so you'll always be ahead and not be like all over the place right when you have so
Oh,
I want to ask you, in your experience, do you find that personalizing a space to suit a child's specific needs like lighting or textures, quiet areas, can enhance the comfort and focus during therapy?
Oh, absolutely. I'd go one further. One thing, because you're talking about peer interaction, socialization, that sort of thing too. I always tell folks, the peer gets a vote in whether or not they want to interact. Right? So the cool thing about like a dedicated space, and especially one that might be unique and be visually cool and all kinds of stuff everywhere, that for if the peer happens to also to be like a neurotypical peer, that might be a very cool novel place for them, right? So hey, I'm gonna go hang out with my friend so and so, and that's really cool because they've got this really awesome room with all this cool stuff in it, in a way that you don't, that they might not experience otherwise. So taking advantage of the diversity itself, right? Of this is. Not everyone has this cool space.
That's a good way to look at it.
My buddy does. I can't wait to get over there again.
That's good. That's a good way to look at that, right? That's in a positive way to look at that. And so I want to talk about integrating therapy and environment design, and we kind of already started talking about that. I think there's a lot of synergy between behavior therapy and the design of a child's environment. So how do you see these two elements working together to create a holistic approach to supporting children with autism at home? And I think we kind of talked about that, but can you give me like examples, or have you even seen that? Or maybe there's something, or you could share that you've seen before that helped with therapy.
Well, creating the environment with intentionality.
Okay.
Right. Whether that be having a a nice dedicated space that the child can go for regulation and all of that, or also in the context of therapeutic services like behavioral services, right? So a foundational idea that ABT is basically built around is the notion that our goal is.
You mentioned ABT.
All Better Together. That's my organization. Yeah. All Better Together. ABT. Our starting place is, what we're trying to do is teach the skills and approach our services with the idea of maximizing a child's ability to live with independence and autonomy to the extent that their potential will allow them to, right? Not everyone is going to be able to go live in an apartment on their own, and or even hold down a job that they're traveling to every day on their own. That's not going to be every child,
Right.
But to the extent that the prosthetic supports aren't needed, right? The support services, 24-hour care, right? Like, we want to work on things in a way to where as little of that stuff is needed as they get older, right? These children are going to be adults someday. Those supports are going to dry up. If a parent is lucky, they will not outlive their child.
Right.
And so how are they getting by in the world once those supports dry up? And from our perspective, we're often doing early intervention, working with kids, and the science, there's going on about a half century now of research and scientific empirical evidence that shows that when it's done well and done right, that early intervention can really change the entire trajectory of what those latter years look like. And if you're doing it right, it's not about it's not about changing who a child is or anything like that. But the world is a very complex, society is a very complex, oftentimes not very forgiving place. And so do you want to work on things in a way where you have to create kind of a bubble world in order for them to be able to be successful and thrive? Or do you want them to be able to be successful and thrive as a participating member of society?
I like that. Yeah.
And so that's our starting point is, how do we work on things in a way that achieves that to the greatest extent possible? And so going back to this idea of intentionality around environment, everything that if you're doing ABA right, there's a systematic, and I would also say gradual and systematic approach to this. So if we want a child to be able to be out in the community and not have to hold a support person's hand the entire time they're there for fear that they're going to run out and get hit by a car or whatever. Then the time that we're spending in therapeutic sessions, we need to be spending those time working on those things in that gradual, systematic way. So what does the environment need to look like to better emulate real world conditions?
Yeah.
And so if it's things like staying independently on task for like independent work. Homework is a common thing. Homework can be a real challenge when someone has to be attached to the kid's hip in order for them to stay on task and get anything done. So we might be working on extending that on task behavior, but when we're first working on it, we're going to do it in we're gonna take out all the noise, all the extraneous environmental noise that might get in the way of their ability to do that. And then as they get more successful in that sparse environment or whatever, then the job's not done. Now it's okay. Now how do we gradually start reincorporating more natural environmental stimuli that the child's going to face in a classroom or wherever. And so it starts with meeting the child where they're at, and then working on things in a way that they make some gains. Don't push them too far too fast. Really meet them where they're at, and then as they achieve some proficiency in this maybe more tightly controlled way that you've arranged, open it up a little bit. Make it a little bit more natural, right? So from an environmental perspective, that the being able to think through these things and have a plan of how am I going to get you from where you're at now to where we ultimately want you to be, which is being able to thrive with a room full of kids and leaves blowing out the window outside and the cacophony of sounds and everything that might take place in a classroom.
And with this environment, as you were stating, that there are some things that we can control, right? And then there are some elements that we can't control, right? There's natural things that happen, like you said, leaves blowing. You're not gonna stop the leaf from blowing, right? So you're gonna hear that noise. But like you said, if you create a space where you start a little bit at a time, and you modify this space where they're able to be in that space and kind of like learn, and then you can make some adjustments to maybe some things. So I like that idea. I like that idea because it helps that child to grow. So like you said, and for me, that is so important as far as families, because that's what I used to always say, and another reason why I created this, business is because my outlook was always, what happens when the parents are off the scene, right? What happens then? Because now they don't have, like you said, that support, and now they be pushed out into this environment, and the environment is like, whatever happens. But if you set them up before then, they will have a greater outcome, right? And so you help them in that environment. So I believe, and I thank you also, because integrating therapy in the environment, it makes a difference. It makes a big difference because they have to live in the environment, and I don't think people really think about it, especially maybe not just the parents, but a lot of people. And another note on that I wanted to say was, we're talking about the child, but I also think it's important for people in general to create a special environment for these individuals.
Yes.
Right? Because not everybody think the same, and not everybody respond the same. So if you create an environment, I'm talking about hospitals, I'm talking about hotels, different places where they can create an environment that can be also conducive for individuals who's coming in to that space, So I think it is all of us have to work together to do that, right?
There's, everyone kind of has to, kind of broaden from their starting point, right?
Yeah.
Like, businesses, public spaces need to do more to accommodate and recognize some of the unique needs and things that might be abrasive or aversive to what is it now, 1 in 36 births, people born these days, that is as far as the current incidence rates, that's a lot of people, and when it comes to commerce, that's a lot of customers, by the way. You want to make it a nice place for your customers to come to, so that they want to. there's a wide swath of a wide and growing swath of the population where what that looks like is a little bit different, and from a sensory standpoint.
Right.
At the same time, they're being able to kind of keep it together in a less than ideal environment
Right.
for you is also something that's important to teach, and to spend time deliberately working on being able to navigate those types of spaces without losing it. Which if we want that to happen, then it even is more important, just like it is for all of us, to have that decompression space.
Yes.
once you get home, right? So
right.
a room like this, that sort of thing, where it's like, that was a rough one.
Right.
I need it calm in my way, and here's the space where I know that I can get some of that, which will make it more tolerable, to have to be out in the big bad world
Right.
for a while. If you know it's like, okay, this isn't all day every day. I've got a place I can go where I don't have to deal with all that.
I think about the sign that says "Home Sweet Home," right?
Right.
When people may put that up in their home because they may be working or going out and facing all these challenges just as individuals, right? We go out and we face challenges, but when we get home, it's like, you have that space like, oh, thank God I'm home.
Let me get my flannel pants on.
Right, right,
Yeah.
yes. And so it's the same thing, space, sweet space, right? That autism-friendly space, sweet space, where that individuals can go and say, whew, that was a lot, and that school system was a lot, the noise, the lights, the smell, but now I'm home and, whew.
Yeah, and now it's
Set up.
the world,
Yes.
the kind of place that I want to be at.
Yes, so it's important. So what's your vision for how ABA therapy and support services for children with autism could evolve in this area? How do you see the role of therapy and space design integrating in the future?
Oh, wow. Well, there's a lot of room for to incorporate those things, right within the development of a behavior plan of, both to help the child themselves, but also the other stakeholders, right? Parents, So we've talked a lot about how critical a role the environment places in there, and there's a lot of work to be done. So I think in a lot of areas, there's more that needs to be done, and more focus to help communities create that space, to help home environments, parents create that space for their children. That's often actually one of the biggest challenges of getting the buy-in from parents, to implement this whole big comprehensive plan. That the environmental stuff is a critical piece to it in order for the rest of it to be able to work, right? If you don't have the environment set up for all these other things to work, then the whole thing it's not going to be worth the paper it's written on. As there are more and more children with autism becoming adults with autism, and where a good many of them, they really aren't going to necessarily be able to live a life where they've got their own place and get themselves to their 9-to-5 job and all that. And so I think a very big need or providers that know how to come in and as a child is transitioning from childhood into adulthood, but they're still going to be living at home. How might you change a single family home? How might you remodel it to provide more independent spaces and room for your child to kind of have more of the experience of of independence and autonomy while still, maintaining safety and everything like that. I've seen some situations where they'll install a door and a stairway outside their child's room, right, to where they can go in and out. I mean, you're not going to do that with someone that's diagnosed with level 3 autism and is very limited in their skill sets, and they're 22 years old. You might not want that door there.
Right.
There's a lot of kids becoming adults on the spectrum where that would be great and would really help with their overall sense of dignity. And being able to live that dignified, independent life. So I think there's a lot of room for that. Certainly, there's a lot of comorbidities with autism. Some of them sometimes are physical in nature, right? So if there are ways kind of similar to like ADA accommodations, right? Ramps and handles and that sort of thing. If your child has some of those needs as well.
And I think also with the space, it doesn't have to. People sometimes think you have to spend a lot of money because when you think about interior design, they associate that with the traditional interior design. And with Autism-Focused interior design, what we do is it is not sometimes modifying that space or remediation, right? You may not have to do all of that. You may not have to tear down walls.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just really just kind of like contriving in a sense. You're staging this space for that individual where they can be able to be more productive and succeed. And so I want to bring that point out because a lot of parents think you have to spend a lot of money, but you don't have to spend a lot of money just to create a space for your child because it's individual. It's not something that's just standard. It all depends on what that individual needs.
Sometimes it's like where you put the how you arrange the couch and the TV in a room.
Right.
Or put it in a different room so you can use that space for their sensory area and the sky's the limit in what you want to spend, but there's a lot that you can do that would be nominal, if any, kind of monetary expense. But you have to approach it with a certain eye. Right. That's not everyone's. That's not necessarily in every parent's wheelhouse. Right. Which is why it's nice to have someone like you available.
Thank you. I didn't pay him to say that either. So we're going to be heading into our kind of last question. So I'd love for you to share how people in Fort Wayne area can reach out to you for therapy service and what to expect when working with you. What can they expect working with you, and how, and can you share with them how can they get a hold of you?
The easiest way would be through our website, so allbettertogether.com. There is contact information for both our California office and specifically for Indiana. There's a contact form there. Also, my email is just tony@allbettertogether.com, and I'm, one of the nice things about going with a provider that is not one of these what we often call like a big box ABA company, right? Where you're getting some corporate person at a desk 4 states away just to figure out what your schedule is. That's we do have an office in California. That's kind of where things started here. But I firmly believe in that individualized, personalized approach, and that's not just about a kid's ABA program. That's also the treatment that the parents are getting too. When parents are calling asking about our services, 95% of the time they're getting me. When they call. And if I can't tell you what to expect, no one can, right, around
Right.
here. So, we are a small scale provider, by design. I don't like using the word boutique, but some parents, that's the word they like to use. Like, oh, it's like you're a boutique provider. I'm like, I don't know. For some reason, that just it doesn't sit well with me. But certainly, a personalized approach, personalized services, and being knowing that the person running the show is a phone call away. If something going on with your insurance, something going on with you can't get an issue resolved with your BCBA. I'm the next rung up, and that doesn't happen too often because I've got a good team, and we certainly know what we're doing, and we're strong adherents to the best evidence-based practices as they exist today. Rigid adherence. That's why I always recommend people look at the CASPA ASD guidelines, and feel free to ask me any of these questions. I welcome them. If you do call and you start peppering a prospective provider, and they're dodgy about their answers or don't want to be straight with you, that should be a red flag right there. Right. You ask people what their BCBA's caseload sizes are, and they're hemming and hawing about it, and don't want to give you a straight answer. That's not cool. There are best practices out there. They should be getting applied. They aren't always. Know the difference.
And that's good, because that kind of leads us into the last kind of thoughts. Before we wrap up, what else would you like to share with families about ABA therapy and creating supportive environments?
If you have a child with autism, this isn't me saying this. This is the last 50 years of empirical support, research in the field. When done right, ABA therapy is the most effective thing out there that can help your child meet their full potential. It's really not even close. That said, it really does. It will always come down to your team. Who the practitioner overseeing your child's program. And what they bring to the table, right? What they know. There's a wide range of levels, right? There, as they say, there are levels to this. Yes. And I wasn't able to grab the information. I was going to look for it. I didn't have time to scoop it up, but the overwhelming percentage of BCBAs that are out there right now. I mean, don't quote me on it, but I would say probably on the order of 80% or so of all BCBAs have had that credential for less than 3 years. This is a very quickly growing field, and there's nothing like practice, and there's nothing like experience. So that's one of the questions that you can be asking is like, what's the experience level of the not just the BTs, but the overseeing clinician that'll be on your child's program. It's not to say that folks that are newer to the field can't be fantastic. There's a lot of really good BCBAs that are out there that have only been doing it for a minute. A lot of great ones out there. But and there's a lot that have been in the field for a while that still have a lot to learn. Yeah. And everything in between. So the way to know the difference again is be that informed consumer of the services your child's receiving.
Shabar, thank you. But thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully you guys have gotten something out of this. It was great having you here, Tony. I appreciate that so much. Remember, God loves you. All you have to do is believe it. I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.